And we took that a step further. We went into coffee auctions. And when we got into coffee auctions, we noticed the same thing. What we like is different than what someone else likes. When we compete for a coffee lot in an auction, uh, when the auction is over, we noticed that the people were bidding on the same lots as we were basically from East Asia, Japan, Taiwan,
Korea.
Korea, and none of the things we were competing with, we found European or American.
If you're starting or growing your business in these volatile times in coffee and you need a little extra support, our scope of business advisory services may be just what you need. Join one of our hugely successful mastermind groups for support in a group setting, or send us an email to discuss our one-on-one consulting and business advisory services, where we'll work with you one-on-one to solve specific problems in your coffee business. All our services come with a 100% money-back guarantee, so send us an email at support@mapitforward.org and let us know how we can help you today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with Wayel, the co-founder of Sulalat. We are talking about the Saudi specialty coffee market from genesis to future. And in the last episode, we had a wonderful discussion about how the Saudi specialty coffee market established itself. And Wayel, being one of the OGs of the industry, was forced and bullied into starting one of the most successful coffee brands in Saudi Arabia. And luckily, it has a great ending to that story so far. But Wayel also has a very interesting story behind his venture into coffee away from Saudi coffee, right? When we were having a chat yesterday, you were telling me about your journey into specialty coffee and tasting specialty coffee and how different it was from what your palate as a Saudi, the relationship that you have with coffee. So in this episode, we're talking about discovering cultural palate, because I imagine, Wayel, that you spent a lot of time in Canada, correct? So experiencing coffee in Canada, given that Arabic coffee was the way that you would drink coffee, and then drinking coffee over there, and then coming back and establishing in Saudi a coffee brand that was supposed to find its way to the Saudi people, and in an industry that wasn't established yet, that was quite a nuanced thing to navigate, if I would hazard a guess. Am I right?
Yes, I would say like the first time where I noticed that coffee is not just coffee, depends on how you prepare it and what you give into it. And I would say the first time I noticed where people say they don't like espresso. And I had an espresso experience in France where it opened my eyes that the coffee plays a role, the machine plays a role, the grinder plays a role, and even the barista has the biggest role in putting all this together to give you a cup where you can enjoy it. And you say it's an espresso, because every time I meet someone who they don't like espresso, I would say, maybe you've never tasted espresso. And I said, no, I've tried it. I said, you've tried it, you ordered it, but you haven't tasted it. Like it wasn't prepared correctly. No one in the time to train and to roast and to select, to really give you that experience. So you might have sought it, but you've never really experienced it. And sometimes it's hard to find a place where you can really experience a special espresso or even a black coffee. Like people who say they don't like black coffee, or what have you tried? And so that played a role where I would say once we decided that we have to basically go ahead and get into business, we didn't want to import coffee experience from outside into Saudi Arabia, because the taste profile of people are different. And I noticed that lots of the training materials, like I've had experience copying before opening the business when I met other roasters and saw their forms and noticed how the evaluation gives so many points to acidity versus sweetness. And I always wondered, why is sweetness not really as important as acidity?
As acidity.
And then I noticed acidity is defined differently by different people. Like we
Mm.
taste the same cup of coffee and you like the acidity and I don't. Or someone thinks it's too sour. Someone,
Subjective, right?
absolutely. And from that club with my friends, when we basically were hobbyists and tasting each other's coffee and ordering coffee from abroad, and we noticed that we're different. We don't like what they like. All the
Hmm.
evaluations where someone says this blend is the absolute best, where you will taste Snickers, this, and all these notes, and we tried to find them, and we thought the acidity was actually removing all other,
Overpowering.
absolutely. And so we thought, at least in Sulalat, we thought we'll do our own thing. We'll do our own cupping forms. We will do our own evaluations. And that formula worked. It's like basically resounded with people, and they felt this is really special. It's really different than what we find in commercial coffee shops. And we took that a step further. We went into coffee auctions. And
Mm.
when we got into coffee auctions, we noticed the same thing. What we like is different than what someone else likes. When
Hmm.
we compete for a coffee lot in an auction, uh, when the auction is over, we noticed that the people were bidding on the same lots as we were basically from East Asia, Japan, Taiwan,
Korea.
Korea, and none of the things we were competing with, we found European or
Hmm.
American. So that was our first auction in 2015. I remember we got an amazing coffee from Esmeralda, and that was called Nuria Natural. Where when me and Sarah were cupping that coffee, and we tasted notes of banana, saffron, uh, rose water, and I was stunned. This is something like, even though I've been ordering auction coffee from online from green suppliers where I can, anyone who's willing to sell by kilo or two, and but this one was really a new experience for me. This is something, and I said, okay, I'll have to get that. That one will basically open minds to what is in a coffee auction, and I
Exactly.
just love it. So I registered for that auction and I started to bid online. And I remember it was Ramadan, it was in the afternoon, and I kept bidding. And then it was night and it's still going on. And it continued to the next day. So,
Wow.
well, like, I think the auction went on for like 13 or 15 hours. And the price went up per pound. I think it passed $350 per pound. And at that time in 2015,
2014, 15. That was big.
that was a record. Like it's never
Yeah.
been before. And once we received the shipment, I mean, everyone was asking, how much are you going to sell it for? And I thought, well, if you calculate how much is per kilo, you'll find that I'll sell you one bean for $1. And
Uh,
we sold everything. people just kept asking, why don't you bring it again? We kept explaining that coffee is an agricultural product.
Mm.
And get a good crop this year. Of course, with Esmeralda, every crop is wonderful, but you will not
Shout out
get,
to Rachel Peterson.
yes, but you will not get the same note year from year.
Yeah.
And probably the next year was even better, but for the palate of someone else. So we kept going, and we've reached a point where we were told we were the biggest company in the world that bids on coffee auctions. I think
Mashallah.
we've bid and won more than 100 micro lots on auctions, and it's probably reached about 30 million tons and more than 9 million, I think. And it's still going. Like last night, we won two lots from the Mexico auction.
Oh,
And
wow.
even though those auctions, they don't give you a lot of coffees, like they'll give you 100.
But that's not the point, right? They're meant to be special. They're meant to be something that only a few get to taste.
And we treat them as such, we package them as such, and we're surprised that people basically are looking for them. It's like it's an experience that it's now on the shelf, and there's only maybe 20 or 50 kilos. So once it's gone, it's gone. But I noticed sometimes you'll have 10 offerings of auction coffee, and someone will come and take a bag of each
Yeah.
just because they don't want to miss it. So we have to make packages of just 100 grams.
100 grams? Yeah. It's a new thing now.
Yeah. And even though you probably know that it's not profitable, neither for us nor for the
No.
farmer, but it's a worthy experience. It's worth it to try it because you may never taste anything like it. And it's worth it for the farmer to have one season where they can pay all their debts and basically invest in some equipment or get the recognition where people will approach them and know they care about their work. And that was basically our main way to get to know farmers and build relations with them. And we just fell in love with auctions, and it's become like one of our main, our brand is known for that globally.
USP. Yeah.
We get orders from China and Taiwan, and just for those auction coffee.
Wow. You know, something that you were talking about reminded me of something from my career coming up through the coffee industry in Australia. I would be in rooms cupping with other people. And whenever somebody would be saying, like, you know, what, talk to us about the coffees that you liked. And I was always preferencing the coffees that were not acidic.
Yeah.
And that were, they favored the sweetness in the cup rather than the acid. And at the time, everybody in the room would look at me like there was something wrong with me, because in Australia, everybody wanted acid in their, like they wanted the acidic coffees. And I would say, actually, I don't like acidic coffees. And, you know, everyone's frowning at you because you're not doing what everyone's supposed to do. And at the time, it wasn't until I moved to the Middle East that I realized that's probably genetic. Because in this region, for those who are in the global industry that are listening to this series, acidic coffees are not revered here in this region. And at the time in Australia, I was the weirdo who was like, I actually don't like acidic coffees. Well, boo-hoo, there must be something wrong with you. But when we talk about cultural palate, it's really, that's an example of the role that sometimes genetics is going to play in something like that. And we need in our industry to remove this pressure of requiring people to like a specific kind of coffee. And when this is my problem with trying to define what quality is, right? When you say that quality is this much sweetness and this much acidity and this much fruit and this much this and this much this. When you're saying that funkiness is a defect and you're saying all of these things, but hey, the region of the world that I live in likes some of those things and favors some of those things. So when you're saying that the things that we like is not quality, wait, what? Do you, do you see quality in a similar way? Like, I'm sure you've been thinking about quality over your career and how the world has been in specialty coffee has been defining it. But do you, as someone who has drunk coffee around the world, do you find that there's a disparity between the way the specialty coffee world is trying to define quality versus what you guys are serving and people are wanting as quality?
I would say that definition, I mean, first of all these rules and cupping forms, I think, came from the wine industry. Like they have definitions for certain wines and how to taste wine and how to cup it and how to evaluate it. And then it moved into the coffee industry. And once it becomes like, you have to look at the leaders of the field, like was the Specialty Coffee Association of America and of Europe. And they had to come up with all these manuals and training materials, and they had to find those forms, which I think it's a worthy effort. I would say once it went outside Europe and the States and Australia, then it becomes our responsibility in the Middle East to come up with our own forms, because it's not really who's better or who's worse. It's just like for me, for example, the best cuisine in the world is the Indian cuisine.
Really?
Absolutely. But I like the Indian cuisine as cooked by Indians. While if you go to a European restaurant that makes Indian cuisine, they've adjusted the ingredients for their palate. So I go there.
Yeah.
This is not Indian food. So all these things is basically, it's different between people, and I should basically respect my own palate and not let anyone tell me what's good, what's not good. If I don't like it, it's not good. So we basically instill on our Q graders, put the scores, because those scores are important to communicate with the farmer, with the supplier, and all these things, and define the defects and all that. But once you're done with that, it's your taste. You might tell me this coffee is 96. My question, is it worth buying? Sometimes, no, it's not worth buying, but it scores 96. Coffee is like 87. Did I buy it? Oh, yes. You should get all you can from that coffee, because that's much better than the 96 coffee, based on that cupping form, which for us, we got accustomed to doing, but it's hard to explain to people you're training, newcomers. We are in a position because we started so early that many people seek our advice.
Yeah. You're setting a standard of sorts in the market, right?
Absolutely. And we basically have a lot of data that we basically use to know where the market's heading, what worked, what doesn't.
Right.
And when someone wants us to help them, they say, I took training in Denmark and I know what I'm doing. I'll do this and that. And I like acidity. I'll convince people acidity is good. Or say, well, if you like acidity, do you want to make coffee in Denmark? Or you want to make it here? And say, no, I want to make it Saudi. So why don't you study the market? Like, give them samples and see who's willing to drink it. And because I'm not against that. You have to, for example, like we have lots of expats here from Europe,
all over the world
area, and I'm all for, like, we do some acidic roast. Like, for example, Sometimes we offer Kenyans, and it's very hard to sell Kenyan coffee in Saudi Arabia. But we offer there, and we notice expats buy. But just know your customer. Like, once you like that coffee, you have to know who to market it to. And if you prefer to sell to a bigger market, you need to be aware of that. Like, I don't want you to come 2 years later and say, oh, we only get expats for our business. It's not enough for us under those prices. So we've studied that before. Like, know who's your customer. If you're targeting that customer, do all the services that come with it and put the pricing that make you basically above the water. And these are important things. And I'm not that kind of coffee, but be careful when you roast it here. Like, how many expats are here? So these things are important.
Yeah, they really are. I remember noticing one of the first times I was here, before I moved to Dubai, I was going to cafes and I was noticing that nowhere had Kenyan coffees. And then I came back and I thought maybe that's a seasonal thing. And then I came back a second time and still no one had Kenyan coffees. And Kenyans are very revered in Australia. And I started asking people, like, why aren't there any Kenyan coffees here? And they're like, they don't really sell very well here. Like, oh, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting market thing to understand. And it really raises like what we want to talk about in the next episode. We're talking about what the differences between running a business in Saudi Arabia versus the rest of the region, which ties in really nicely with the idea of, some parts of this, we got to market mostly to expats. And in other parts, we've got to market more to Arabs and different kinds of markets. So join us in episode 3 of this series, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.